Yeah, oh my God. Welcome to Chikahan with Prof. Shelo. Finally, ako rin po ay naging biktima ng traffic. We just arrived mga 5 minutes before 8. And it's grabe talaga yung traffic. Miraculously medyo malinaw sa medyo mabilis na sa Commonwealth Avenue, which is really weird. Okay, so salamat po. Salamat sa mga dumalaw dito, especially those who are on time. Thank you for your patience. Naaliw ako sa mga sagot ninyo. Willing to wait. Parang, parang fast food. Parang willing to wait. And as you know, no, ang guest natin ngayon, nasa limelight. Particularly because naging malaking issue na 'tong mga corruption sa flood control projects. And yet apparently, despite the president's actions, no, uh, walang effect in the sense na meron pa ring mga nagtatangkang mang-bribe ng ating mga uh, representatives, ng ating mga legislators. Our guest, of course, is the representative of the First District of Batangas, si Leandro Leviste. Let's call him uh, now. Yan.
Hello.
Good evening. What do we call you?
Lian is fine.
Lian, it's fine. Yan, Lian. Um, as you know, no, since the nagsimula itong SONA ng presidente, naging issue itong corruption, naging issue yung flood control projects because apparently ang laki ng mga budget for these projects and for some reason hindi nagkakaroon ng effect sa ating pagbaha. And as if that wasn't so may mga projects that appear to be incomplete, 'di ba? Yung mga dinadalaw ng presidente. And then your story became headlines. Can you run us can you tell us what happened to that sa inyo? Ano ba yung nangyari? Merong nagba-bribe daw.
Our district engineer asked to come to my office to discuss the ongoing projects in our
Mm.
district, which I had been inspecting over the past few weeks. And soon when we began our meeting, said na ang mga contractor ay gustong magpadala ng suporta para sa aking mga programa. And during our conversation, he's talking about how even if I don't need it, this is the way things are. It's the SOP for a certain percentage of the projects in DPWH to have certain percentage of the cost reserved for at least the congressman in the first district of Batangas. And he even had something with him, which I've recounted in other interviews over the past few days, which included a receipt of the
Mm.
projects for which that was for. And then I asked for the PNP to come, and the rest has already been reported. Since then, we've been working on some legislation for the solution that would hopefully incentivize other DPWH districts and mine, of course, to be more efficient with the costs of our projects. And in my district also, we are still auditing the years of completed so-called projects in the district. And to the extent that there are identified defects or missing quantities in the projects that have already been delivered, then hopefully we can get more worth from the money that has been spent on these projects.
Okay. Is this a case of entrapment ba? I mean, were you expecting your district engineer to bring this matter up? Sabi mo kasi tinawag yung police eh. Were they waiting?
Actually, the surprise of people is a bit surprising to me. That the I guess reason people are surprised is because it hasn't happened before, but maybe it's just not been reported before. But offering percentage of costs of projects is, I think, already known by your viewers as something that is commonplace, at least I can say, in my district in Batangas.
Oh.
I just assumed office in June 30, 2025. And the projects that are ongoing now were part of the budget that was approved by last year's Congress. And what I have learned is that the bidding for the 2025 projects begins, for example, in late 2024. And from the time that the projects are even put into the budget, those projects are already identified for certain contractors, and the consideration for those projects are already being discussed and soon after paid for. So this happens at least in the first district of Batangas all the time for many years, and it would have happened for the 2026 budget projects over the coming months, because budget season has just begun, with
Mm.
2026 projects for my district having just been submitted, which was actually one thing that was supposed to be discussed between us and our district engineer. And it is, I guess, news because I did not accept what otherwise would be a standard operating procedure.
Yan. Yun na nga, the use of the word SOP, no? So my question now is, despite the attention being brought to corruption dito sa mga infrastructure, yung fact ba na that he continued to go about his business, I mean to offer yung percentage, what does that say about what does that say about the government's efforts to address this issue? Di ba malaking issue yan? And yet, parang walang effect. There's no effect on the conduct of your engineer.
There is an effect on the issue being widely discussed in the media. I'm sure at least um, it's less than it was prior to PBBM saying mahiya naman kayo. And the thing is just that it's so deep and well established. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of people want to represent my Batangas district in Congress, because it's just understood that when you become congressman of the first district of Batangas, let's say 300 million pesos out of 3 billion pesos per year is reserved for you. It's just that I reported it, and because I'm not going to accept that percentage reserved for me, then I would hope at least that my district can benefit from the savings that the government will will gain. Because at the moment, I think the costs for DPWH projects are established within DPWH per kilometer of road, per square meter of multipurpose building, and any private sector contractor can tell you that those costs are too high. And
Yeah.
that's because the percentage that is reserved for the approvers of the projects, I'm told in the first district of Batangas, are already embedded in the budget. And if that's not being taken, then either there's savings that goes back to the national treasury,
Treasury, yeah.
or someone else in the DPWH system, I was told, might take it. And it's incumbent then on me as a representative of my district to try and make my district benefit from those savings. Hopefully, if we can save, for example, 300 million pesos a year from more efficient procurement, then we can instead convert that to that much more in projects for my district, including classrooms, roads, and other things much needed.
Okay. May I know you're part of the nasa business sector kayo before running for office?
Yes, I have a company that develops solar farms.
Is this something you see sa private sector, tong kind
Oh,
of corruption?
I mean, every time that a contractor submits a bid in the
Yeah.
private sector, the buyer will want to negotiate a 20 to 30% discount. The difference is in the public sector is just that it's not negotiated.
Yeah.
And the buyer should want to get the best deal if he's using his own money. So we're just, I think even in Congress approving a 2026 budget, in the private sector, companies are also currently reviewing their 2026 budgets. And the board of directors who approves that budget will always tell the management, come back when you find 20% cost savings. So as the board of directors of the DPWH, I think Congress should just do what any private sector company would also do.
Yeah. And now you've mentioned this is commonplace in your district, diba? So that's not flattering. And what do we do about this?
Well, by the incident that happened last Friday, I hope that it will not be commonplace anymore. So, having such examples can hopefully serve as a deterrent. And again, I believe in incentives. So, currently, there's not a strong incentive to have savings. So, hopefully, that can change if there's a provision in the upcoming budget that will mean that if you save 300 million for your district, then that money is going to be reallocated for new projects in your district. Secondly, I think the allocation of projects is done at the discretion of Congress. And if unchecked, sometimes the projects are allocated not in the districts that have the least corruption, but there is a temptation to put the most projects in districts that have more corruption because there
Mhm.
might be less checks and balances. The fact that I'm now auditing projects in my district is a deterrent for contractors to lobby for districts to be put in my district. So if there were also incentives for districts that have, based on certain KPIs, lower costs, better quality, just better work by contractors, then that would also encourage other districts to try and be the best performing DPWH districts, because then we can bring in the most projects for our districts. And I also just think that there's already a lot of other things in government where resources are allocated equitably, like the national tax allotment, where I think it is computed based on population and land area automatically. Whether you are a municipality that is in favor or not, you have the same formula determining your NTA, or formerly called ERA, per LGU in the country. And I don't see why DPWH projects in Congress cannot also be allocated based on a formula rather than based on the discretion of Congress.
Ah, okay. Yung pong era sa ating mga viewers, yung share ng local government sa national income. No? And it's now called a national tax allotment. And it's a huge amount. But sabi nga ni Kong Rega, Regarda, I'm sorry, Leviste, there's a formula based on income, population, tsaka land area. And that's how it's distributed throughout the country. And ang point I think ni Rep. Leviste is that we should be able to apply something similar when we're talking about projects, no? And I think from our previous episodes, the mga visitors natin, diyan na pumapasok yung pork since illegal na yung officially yung pork barrel allotments. Naglalabi ngayon sa budget ng DPWH yung mga congressmen, and that's how they get the funds in. Yan. Sir, ano ba yung ano natin dito, yung institutional reforms? Uh, may legislation ba tayong nakikita dito? Is this something that we can legislate, or is your example as a deterrent enough?
Well, again, if you have incentives for districts to have efficient DPWH procurement, then people will naturally want them to have the best practices and lowest cost in their projects. So I will propose in this upcoming national budget that districts get their equitable share of the DPWH budget, and that will hopefully avoid some of the issues on flood control, where there were reports of these substandard projects, predominantly in areas that have lesser populations actually, but chosen because there was less scrutiny until it gained public attention on projects done in those areas.
Okay. Ngayon, this is your first term po, so apparently this is a priority now kasi nandiyan na, it's in your face, di ba? I mean, it must not have been fun to be greeted this way. Pero yung inyo pong ibang legislative priorities, is that something that you might want to share with us?
Somewhat related
Yes.
to the public reaction on corruption in DPWH is hopefully more political will now behind lowering taxes. Because if the country can afford to spend 250 billion pesos a year on flood control projects, then maybe if we don't have those flood control projects anymore, then we can have 250 billion pesos a year of lower taxes. I think the country collects around 650 billion pesos a year from the value added tax at 12%. So logically, if you reduce it down to 10%, then we might have a bit over 120, 130 billion pesos in savings, not to mention if it will stimulate more consumption and the tax base will also increase. So one of the things that I will also move is that in light of what I think is going to be uh, reduction in the DPWH budget, that hopefully the public can benefit from this by having lower taxes rather than having that budget reallocated into projects somewhere else that might also run into problems.
Okay, but we have this VAT. Our VAT is very high, no? Regional in this our region, it's one of the highest ones, if not the highest. It's also legislated because there's a need to generate funds, di ba? Particularly to pay foreign debt at the time ni Arroyo. So, you think you're going to have trouble lowering VAT? It sounds like a very good idea, especially for the rest of us who have to end up paying for it. Um, you don't expect opposition on that point. Sabihin na, dyan nga gagaling yung pera ng Pilipinas eh.
Yes, I think that people say we don't have the fiscal space to lower taxes, but the same people say that we have to spend this much on flood control. So if we reduce our spending on flood control, then I do not logically see why we cannot then pass through the savings on a lower VAT if they had previously been saying that we had the fiscal space for that 250 billion pesos a year in flood control. And perhaps the economists could also argue that lowering taxes will stimulate consumption and also reduce the incentive for people to avoid the taxes. So it might not even end up being that much revenue loss in the first place. And that I think the burden should really be on Congress to prove that the spending is necessary. And if it's not, then we should just in general spend less. But our national budget has really ballooned in the past few years. Government spending as a percentage of GDP is much higher than it was before the pandemic. And it, of course, increased during the pandemic, but it really should have gone back down
Yes.
2022 onwards. And the fact then that you asked a while ago how it is in the private sector, we're just coming up with new budgets for Congress to approve every year is something that logically someone should just say then, um, how did the last few years of budgets of this size do for us? Are our children more better performing than they were when we had a smaller budget? if if not, then maybe it's not really the spending that's the problem, but it's something else in the system, and that before we end up having to allocate more for all these different government agencies, that we can instead look at how we can lower the costs.
All right. Anything else in your agenda?
Well, if someone then says that we cannot lower taxes, then I would say we can have a revenue neutral tax bill where we lower the VAT and increase taxes on high end real estate. And that is something that I actually consulted Professor Magno on, because I believe that economists would generally agree that it is a good idea to have a wealth tax. The
Hmm.
problem is that it's hard to enforce because people would have then the incentive to have capital flight, bringing their wealth
Yes.
offshore, or easily evade it. And land is what cannot be brought offshore and hidden, and I think would be easy to target the wealthiest people because there's only a few places in the Philippines where you have this concentration of very high priced land. Let's say over 300,000 pesos per square meter.
Perimeter.
You could estimate that if there's around 2,000 hectares of land with 500,000 pesos per square meter, that's a 10 trillion peso addressable tax base. And you had to plug a, let's say, 150 billion peso revenue loss from a lower VAT, then you could just impose a 1.5% tax on high priced land. That would mean that the country that is currently the highest VAT and lowest property tax in ASEAN, the Philippines, would have something more in line with what the other ASEAN countries have, which is around the 10% VAT. I think around that is the
Yeah.
average in ASEAN, and a higher property tax, but only targeted to high priced land.
All right. Now, for the viewers, no, remind ko lang kayo, I think Prof. Shelo told us about the experience in other countries na nahihirapan silang i-enforce yung uh, wealth tax because they are able to hide their assets. Tapos the states were spending more trying to uncover yung mga beneficial owner, etc. To the point that they've given up. Pero that sounds good, no? Kasi paano mo naman itatago yung mga lupain mo? And if we did target the ultra rich, the uber rich, di ba? Then it might not be that difficult to enforce. Ang problema lang yung resistance sa legislation, no? I hope you don't take this the wrong way, Kong, but some people are saying you're too rich to be bribed. Kaya kaya mo daw na you
Mhm.
can decline itong mga standard operating procedure. Somebody said that last night sa show eh. You're too rich. Is 'di ba? So may value pala yung mayaman ka kasi you don't need their money. Ano what do you think?
And I'm also proposing a wealth tax because I think there's really no argument against a wealth tax in principle. It's
Yes.
only in how it could be enforced. And that's why actually some of the wealthy people that I discuss this with admit that the easy way to tax wealth is on the high priced land. I
Yeah.
think even the economic experts in various government agencies know that the way to raise more revenue without destroying the economy is taxing high priced land. No one's just doing it because, of course, other people might be receiving campaign contributions from people that own high priced land. And I
Mm.
would like to think that one way that I can uniquely contribute is if I can propose legislation that is commonsensical and can be done if you don't owe anyone for contributing to your campaign.
Okay. Um the other problem you will encounter is that owners of high priced lands are in Congress.
Actually, I would tie that into the timeliness of this proposal because there's a lot of public outrage on corruption now. And I think people are also saying that all these investigations are not going to do much to reduce corruption at the point that it happens upstream. And so I would say that a tax on wealth is a way to reduce corruption at the point where it is consumed or used, which is downstream,
Mm.
because the money that is stolen from flood control projects is used to buy homes in Forbes Park. If we can't stop people from returning the money that was stolen in the past, then we can just impose a tax on homes in Forbes Park.
Okay. Put na lang I don't live there. All right. Normally may mga questions yung viewers but I think they're just uh uh, in awe. Ang news dito is the ability to say no to someone who says, Kong, you have 300 million, 300 million as your share. It's yan po yung standard operating procedure here. And the fact na nagkaroon ng arrest. No? So that makes news. And that's why we wanted to talk to you to see ano ba talaga yung
Actually,
nangyari.
I just saw a very thoughtful proposal in your comment section about
Yes.
imposing 100% estate tax. Coincidentally, that was something that I would advocate about when I was in school. And I really think that, in principle, that is the most efficient tax, because then you're not going to be disincentivizing anyone from working in their lifetime. Except that, again, it's very easy to avoid estate or wealth taxes because you could just assign your wealth to someone else to avoid the BAR collecting on it. But again,
Uh,
imposing the tax on land will not destroy the economy because the supply of land is finite, cannot be hidden, and it would only affect a very small percentage of the country.
yeah. Okay. Okay. Is there anything else we should be interested in your first term as a representative of the first district of Batangas?
Well, other than all of this talk about lowering spending, I think, contrary to that, we should increase spending on our schools. And that's something that I'm focused on also in my district, where we're trying to align as much of our DPWH budget as we can towards classrooms. And I've also been personally prioritizing scholarships or allowances for students. And I wonder what the uh, economic policymakers have to say about uh, the worthwhileness of of increasing education spending, but that at least in my uh, personal experiences going around schools in the first district of Batangas, where the budget is very much badly needed, that I think any increase that is feasible in the current context would be wisely spent if it were allocated first, of course, to classrooms. And of course, there's a much reported classroom shortage of 165,000 classrooms, and there's a flood control budget of 250 billion. And I think that there's a lot of people in Congress who would already agree on moving that flood control budget to classrooms. So that would be a great achievement for the whole Congress and Senate if that is achieved for the 2026 budget. And after that, of course, there's much else among operating expenses, teachers' pay, and allowances for students that can hopefully be funded on a regular basis now that we have found a way to uh, force savings on DPWH projects. So again, just to state more clearly also what I said a while ago about trying to find savings in my own district. Of course, you could also impose those savings across the whole DPWH, but
Mhm.
again, I'm just trying to not overstep my mandate as a representative of the first district of Batangas. Speaking on behalf of my own district,
Yeah.
if we could lower the cost of all of the DPWH projects in my district, then those savings could hopefully go back into our district, primarily to our schools. Then, yeah, hopefully we can fund the classroom shortage and other school requirements before even getting additional funding from the national government.
All right. Very good. Now, the si Prof. Shelo made this comment, no? May national valuation na tayo ng land. It's now with a specific office. That's a very recent law. And I wonder what she's trying to say. Ang purpose po kasi ng law na yan is sometimes may mga LGU who have no skills at all in assessing the value of property within their territorial jurisdiction. So, magiging uniform na yan. But I don't think itong mga high-priced lands, are in local government units na hindi marunong mag-assess ng property values. So I think the plan to impose a wealth tax on the super rich shouldn't be affected in a negative way nitong bagong batas na to. Right? If you see any other comments, wala na. We're we're about done since I don't see any other comments. And any last words, uh, Lian?
Well, thank you for this opportunity to discuss these policies. It's actually a preview of some of the bills that we would like to file in the coming weeks, and I hope that we can actually get your input on especially the tax measures, because it's something that I think is seemingly out of the political conversation at the moment, but given the uh, public reaction to the DPWH issues, can hopefully gain some traction, because if we can spend that much on wasteful projects, then why can't we lower taxes? So yeah, that's something that I'm excited about working on, and hopefully we can work together on that.
Yes. The Prof. Shallow commits to helping you. She's not here, so for the first time, I'm committing her because she always gives me work to do. So now she will help you with your proposed tax measures.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Liana. It's not just the. I'm happy to hear. It's not just the story about the arrest. No, it's the fact na you have a plan, and it's very rare sa ating mga legislators and many of whom don't even know what they're going to do. And it looks organized. I hope you succeed in your plans, and may we catch more corrupt people.
Thank you.
Okay, maraming salamat. I will let you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, maraming salamat po. Ang target namin is around 45 minutes. That's where we are. Meron akong kwento about corruption, no? Meron akong office mate dati. We were helping mga pesante. That's what the main line of work ko. And galing siyang office of the ombudsman. And nagkukwento siya na one time dinadalaw talaga siya ng mga yung representative ng mga parties, yung mga kinakasuhan ng graft, 'di ba? Kasi ombudsman. At inabutan siya ng isang gym bag with cash. And I think I can't remember, mga at least 150,000 or something like that. And early 90s to. And of course, yung katrabaho ko is a very decent um, lawyer. And sabi niya, I don't take bribes po. Please go away. Ayun, ang sinabi niya, hindi ko po yan ginagawa. And I think nagkaroon ng misunderstanding kasi that guy returned later with 2 bags of cash. So ganun yung corruption dito sa ating bansa, no? Um, lantaran eh. Tsaka dinadalaw talaga sa office ng ombudsman, 'di ba? So I'm trying to read your comments. I mean, you wonder how many times that sort of incident happens in government every day. Sino yung nagsabi ng dinismiss ko yung guest na parang estudyante? I didn't mean to, ah. Tsaka hindi ko po alam na mag-i-English tayo tonight. Okay lang naman. Hindi lang ako nag-expect. Anyways, tomorrow, I think we have another episode again on the proposed budget. And meron atang feature na heavy metal version ng tax ng ina mo. And I got a little preview of that, and it's fun. I think you should tune in para lang malaman natin na, I mean, yung effort na ginagawa ng tao with that song. Okay? Yun nga eh, ang sa akin is, I think we need good stories. And when you hear a story about attempted bribery, di ba? Mga corruption na napipigilan, then it's something that we should look into. At least let's talk to the people involved to see kung ano yung nangyari. Ngayon, kung standard operating procedure nga yan, it's a little hard to take, di ba? Kung automatic na yan, without even asking, sasabihin sa'yo po yan. And I'm happy, at least from what I gathered tonight, na meron pa rin mga nangyayari na ganito. So, until the next episode, I see Prof. Magno, Prof. Shell has to be there because it's economics. And we'll all see you tomorrow. Maraming salamat din po, especially those who waited. Okay? So, we'll see you tomorrow. At magandang gabi po sa ating lahat. Yan.
Taksangin mo, bantayan mo, wag kayang lusayin ang mga politiko. Yung perang yan, pinaghirapan mo, susuko mo na lang, nila pa pa sa'yo. Taksangin mo, bantayan mo, wag kayang lusayin ang mga politiko. Yung perang yan, pinaghirapan mo, susuko mo na lang, nila pa pa sa'yo.